Rain poured from the dark alien sky, hitting the stone roofs of the monastery with a sound like endless whispers. The holy monastery of the Sisters of the Eternal Light stood high on a cliff, its white towers glowing faintly in the storm. Inside, the air was cold, smelling of incense and wet stone. Sister Liara walked quickly through the empty hallways, her robe brushing against the floor. She was young, with gentle silver eyes and soft blue skin, but her heart carried the heavy weight of her vows. Since she was a child, she had lived here following the sacred rules. No lies, no violence, no contact with outsiders. And above all, no touch from a man, especially a human. The elders taught that humans were dangerous, wild, and full of sin. The storm was worse tonight. The wind howled through the old walls, rattling the tall windows. Liara had been ordered to bring a basket of dried herbs to the old storage hall. She walked through a narrow corridor that was rarely used. That was when she heard it, a faint sound. It was not the wind. It was not the rain. It was breathing. Her steps slowed. She turned her head toward the sound, and her heart began to race. She followed it, her hands tightening on the basket. The sound grew louder. It came from behind an old wooden door, one that hadn't been opened in years. She pushed it slowly. The smell of dust filled her nose. In the dim light, she saw shapes, broken shelves, empty crates, and in the corner, lying against the wall, was something that made her freeze. A man, not just any man, a human. His hair was dark and wet from the rain. His clothes were torn and stained with blood. One of his legs was bent at a strange angle, and his face was pale. When he looked up, their eyes met. His were a deep brown, filled with pain. "And something else, please," he whispered, his voice rough. "Water." Liara's breath caught. This was forbidden. If anyone found out, she could be punished. She could be thrown out of the monastery. She could be called corrupted. Her mind screamed at her to leave, to run, to call the guards. But her feet did not move. She stepped closer. "You shouldn't be here," she said softly. "I had no choice," he breathed. "They were hunting me. I barely made it this far." Liara looked at the deep gash on his arm, the bruises along his side. He was not lying. Someone had tried to kill him. Her teachings told her he was dangerous, but her heart told her he was dying. "If the sisters find you," she began. "Then I'm dead," he said. His voice was low, desperate. "Please, I don't want to die here. Not alone." Lyra's fingers tightened around the handle of the basket. She could hear the rain outside, the distant chanting of the other sisters in the prayer hall. No one knew she was here. No one would see if she helped him. She took a step closer. "I can't keep you here," she said, her voice shaking. "But I can give you water." She reached into her basket and pulled out a small flask she carried for long walks. Kneeling, she held it to his lips. He drank slowly, his eyes never leaving hers. When he pulled back, there was a small, tired smile on his face. "Thank you," he whispered. "My name is Daniel." She hesitated. "I am Sister Liara." "Liara," he repeated, as if tasting the name. "Why are you helping me?" I thought. "Your kind hated mine." Liara looked away. "We are taught that humans are dangerous, that you bring chaos wherever you go, that you tempt the soul to sin." Daniel let out a weak laugh. "Do I look dangerous to you right now?" She looked at him again, wet hair clinging to his face, blood on his skin, his body trembling with exhaustion. No, he did not look dangerous. He looked fragile, alone. "No," she admitted. "You look hurt." Silence filled the room for a moment, broken only by the sound of the rain. Liara knew she should leave, but something inside her refused. She didn't understand it, why she felt this pull toward him. why she couldn't turn away. Daniel's voice was soft when he spoke again. I don't know what your rules say, but where I'm from, helping someone isn't a sin. It's the right thing to do. Her heart beat faster. No one had ever spoken to her like this before. His words felt like they carried a warmth the cold monastery had never given her. She stood slowly. I will bring you food, she said, surprising herself. And medicine, if I can find it. But you must stay quiet. No one can know you are here. Daniel's eyes softened. I owe you my life. As Liara turned to leave, the thought echoed in her mind. She was breaking her vows, risking everything. For a man she had just met. But for the first time in years, she didn't feel the heavy weight of the monastery's walls. Instead, she felt alive. And deep in her heart, she knew this was only the beginning. The storm passed, but the night's in. The monastery stayed cold and quiet, the kind of quiet that could hear a footstep from far away. For Sister Liara, every shadow in the hallway now felt alive. Every door felt like it might open to reveal her secret. It had been 2 days since she found Daniel in the old storage hall. He was still weak, and his leg was not healing fast enough. She had slipped him bread and dried fruit from the kitchens, hiding them under folds of her robe. Every night, she told herself it would be the last time. Every night, she went back anyway. The old storage hall was far from the main prayer rooms, and no one visited unless they were ordered to clean it. The door creaked softly when she opened it, letting the smell of dust and faint herbs out. Inside, Daniel sat propped against the wall, a thin blanket she had stolen covering him. You came, he said, his voice low but warmer than before. Liara set down the small cloth bundle she carried. I told you I would. He smiled, tired, but real? I wasn't sure. You risk a lot for me. She tried to sound calm, though her heart was not. If you make noise, they will hear you. So eat quickly. Daniel unwrapped the bundle. Inside were small pieces of soft bread and slices of dried fruit. He took one bite and closed his eyes like it was the best thing he had tasted in years. This tastes like life, he murmured. Lyra's lips curved into a small smile before she could stop it. Humans exaggerate too much. Maybe, he said, chewing slowly. But when you've been starving, every bite feels holy. The word holy struck something inside her. She had spent her whole life believing holiness came from rules, prayers, and distance from temptation. Yet here, in this dusty, forgotten room, she felt closer to something sacred than she had in years. Why were they hunting you? She asked quietly. Daniel's expression darkened. Was part of a human trade mission. We were supposed to negotiate passage through alien territories. But someone betrayed us. My own people. Or maybe theirs. Doesn't matter now. The ones chasing me weren't soldiers. They were mercenaries. Paid to make sure I disappeared. Liara frowned. You mean? Someone wanted you dead for politics. He nodded. That's the galaxy. Not so different from religion, is it? People use faith or power to control others. And people like us get caught in the middle. Her heart tightened. No one had ever spoken to her about the flaws of her own world like this. She had spoken these thoughts aloud to the other sisters. She would be punished. Yet hearing them from him made her want to hear more. You speak too freely, she whispered. I've been told that before, he said, a faint grin on his lips. But tell me something. Are you helping me because you pity me, or because you don't believe everything they taught you? She hesitated. I don't know. Daniel leaned forward slightly, wincing as his injured leg shifted. I think you do know. You're just afraid to admit it. Her breath caught. She wanted to argue, but the truth in his words wrapped around her like the storm's cold wind. Maybe, she said softly. I only believe in helping someone in need. And maybe, Daniel said, his voice like a whisper of fire. You believe in more than that. You believe in me. Her cheeks warmed. She stood quickly, turning away so he could not see her face. I should go before someone notices. As she reached the door, Daniel's voice stopped her. Liara, thank you. You've given me more than food. You've given me hope. She didn't look back. She couldn't, but his words stayed with her all the way back to her small cell in the monastery. That night, lying on her narrow bed, she stared at the stone ceiling. The chanting of the sisters echoed faintly through the halls. She closed her eyes, and instead of holy verses, she saw Daniel's eyes, warm, human, and alive in a way that defied everything she had been taught. She told herself she could still end this. She could leave him to fend for himself, return to her quiet life, and never think of him again. But deep inside, she knew the truth. Tomorrow night, she would go back. She would keep going back, and each time she did, the walls of the monastery would feel a little less like home and a little more like a cage. The next few days in the monastery were heavier than the stone walls themselves. Liara walked the long corridors with her head bowed, but her thoughts were never on the sacred chants or the words of the elders. They were on Daniel. Every moment. She wasn't with him. She was thinking of him, wondering if he had eaten, if his wound was still bleeding, if he was in pain. But she wasn't the only one watching. Sister Medrin, one of the older nuns, had sharp eyes and a tongue that liked to whisper into the ears of the high matron. She had noticed Leora's late returns from kitchen duty. The faint dust on her robe's hem, the way she seemed distracted during prayer. One evening, as the sun sank behind the alien mountains, Medrin stopped her in the hallway. "Where have you been, Sister Liara?" she asked, her voice smooth but heavy with suspicion. Liara kept her face calm. "I was replenishing herbs in the storeroom." Medrin's narrow eyes studied her face, searching for cracks in her words. "That old storeroom is rarely used, and yet you seem to visit often these days." "I find it peaceful," Liara replied, forcing a small smile. "It is a place where no one disturbs my prayers." Medrin held her gaze for a long moment, then nodded and walked away. But Leora's chest was tight. She knew the old nun didn't believe her, and worse, she might start following her that night. She slipped through the silent halls toward the storeroom, careful to take a different route. The air was colder, the shadows longer. Her heartbeat echoed in her ears. When she opened the creaky door, Daniel was waiting, his eyes lighting up when he saw her. "You're late," he said softly, though there was no anger in his voice. "Was careful," she replied, setting down a small bowl of hot broth she had managed to hide under her robe. "Someone suspects me." Daniel's smile faded. "Then you shouldn't come." Her eyes snapped to his. "And leave you here to die." "No, I couldn't." He studied her as if trying to understand something that went beyond words. "You know, Liara, in my world, when someone risks their life for you, it means they care." She felt the warmth rise in her cheeks again, but she looked away. "I'm not risking my life. I'm fulfilling the duty of kindness." Daniel's voice was soft but firm. "You can call it kindness if you want. I call it something else." They sat in silence for a while as he ate, the dim light casting soft shadows on the dusty walls. Every now and then their eyes met, and each time it happened, Liara felt that same pull in her chest. When he finished, she checked the bandage on his leg. The wound was still deep, but it looked cleaner than before. "You'll heal," she said quietly. "If I live that long," Daniel murmured. She looked at him sharply. "Don't speak like that. It's the truth," he said. "If they find me here, they'll kill me. And you'll be punished. Maybe worse than me." Hands froze over the bandage. She knew he was right. Yet the thought of leaving him here, alone, hunted, felt more wrong than breaking every vow she had ever sworn. "Daniel," she whispered, "all my life, I believed sin was touching what was forbidden. But now, I think, the real sign would be turning away from someone who needs you." His eyes softened. "That's because you have a real heart, Liara, and no rule can erase that." Her breath caught. His words felt dangerous not because they broke the monastery's laws, but because they made her want to break them even more. That night, as she left him, she kept to the deepest shadows, avoiding the torchlight of passing sisters. She reached her small cell without being seen, but sleep didn't come. She thought of Medrin's suspicious gaze. She thought of Daniel's weak smile. She thought of her vows, her faith, and the strange new warmth that was growing inside her like a secret flame by dawn. She realized something. She was no longer afraid of sin. She was afraid of losing him. The morning bells rang louder than usual, their deep chimes rolling through the monastery like thunder. Liara had just finished sweeping the prayer hall when the heavy main gates opened, letting in a cold wind and the High Council of the Order of the Eternal Light. 6 elder sisters in long, pure white robes stepped inside, their faces hidden. Under deep hoods, behind them walked 2 armed temple guards, each carrying a staff tipped with glowing crystal. Their presence was rare and only happened when the order feared corruption inside. Its walls, Lyra's stomach tightened. Every sister knelt as the high matron of the council entered. Her voice was calm, but her words cut through the air like a blade. "There has been an intrusion," she announced. "A stranger, not of our faith, was seen in the valley days ago. He may seek shelter in this sacred place. We will search every room, every corridor, every shadow. No impurity will remain here." Liara's heart pounded. Daniel. They had come for him. From her place on the floor, she kept her head low, afraid the thundering in her chest could be heard. The council split into pairs and began walking through the monastery, guards following. Doors opened, rooms were checked. Questions were asked. The air grew heavy with the sound of boots and the low murmur of suspicion. Liara excused herself quietly from the prayer hall, her hands gripping her robe so tightly her knuckles turned pale. She moved quickly, taking the servants' passageways to reach the old storage hall before anyone else did. When she opened the door, Daniel was already on his feet. Well, almost. He leaned on the wall, his injured leg trembling. His eyes were sharp, sensing the danger from her expression alone. "They're here for you," she whispered. "The High Council. Armed guards. They will search everywhere." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Then you have to tell them you found me, and I'll go quietly. I won't let you get punished." Her voice rose in panic, though still quiet. "No, if they see you, they'll kill you. They won't ask questions. They'll call it cleansing." "Liara," he began, but she cut him off. "There's a place," she said quickly. "The prayer chamber of silence. No one goes there. Without permission, it's too sacred. I can hide you there until the search is over." He hesitated. "If they catch you using that room for me, then I'll face it," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "I won't lose you." Daniel searched her face for a moment, then nodded. "Lead the way." She moved fast, slipping him into the dim back corridors, her ears straining for footsteps. The temple guards' voices echoed somewhere close, their boots striking the floor in rhythm. Twice she had to stop and press him into the shadows as sisters passed by. Finally, they reached a narrow wooden door carved with old symbols. Liara pulled a small silver key from the cord around her neck, a key only given to fully sworn sisters. She unlocked the door, pushed it open, and guided him inside. The prayer chamber was small, lit only by the soft glow of a single candle in the center. The walls were lined with ancient scrolls, and the air was thick with incense. It felt like stepping into the heart of the monastery, quiet, untouched. Holy. Daniel sank down against the far wall, breathing hard. I don't deserve this kind of risk. Liara knelt in front of him. Maybe not, but I choose it. Her own words startled her. She realized she wasn't speaking out of duty anymore. She was speaking out of something deeper. Liara? Daniel's voice was low, almost a whisper. Why? She looked into his eyes. Because if it's with you, then it's not a sin. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The words hung in the air like a vow, a confession, and a rebellion all at once. Suddenly, voices sounded outside the door. The guards were close. Liara stood, blew out the candle to darken the room, and whispered, "Don't make a sound. Not even a breath." The footsteps passed. The voices faded. Only then did she dare to breathe again. When she left the chamber, locking the door behind her, she knew the danger wasn't over. The council would keep searching. They might even return tomorrow, but for now, Daniel was safe, and that was all that mattered. Night fell heavy over the monastery, pressing its silence into every corridor and chamber. The storm clouds had cleared, revealing a pale moon that cast long silver shadows across the stone floors. The air was cold, sharp enough to bite at bear. Sister Liara walked alone through the narrow passage leading to the prayer chamber of silence. She had waited until the last torch in the hallway was dimmed, until the last echo of the sister's footsteps faded. Her heart beat faster with every step. The key in her hand felt heavier than it ever had before. This key was a symbol of trust, of vows sworn to the order. She was about to use it for something that elders would call blasphemy. She unlocked the door quietly and slipped inside. Daniel sat in the far corner, his back against the wall, his head resting on his arm. The dim light from the small window painted him in soft shadows. When he opened his eyes and saw her, there was a flicker of relief, followed by something warmer. "You came," he said, his voice low. "I couldn't leave you here alone all night," she replied, closing the door behind her. "The guards may search again. If they find you," he shook his head, "you shouldn't be here. If they find you here with me." "They won't," she interrupted, though she wasn't. As certain as she sounded, "I'll keep watch." Daniel studied her for a moment. "You're risking more than your vows now, Liara. You know that?" Her breath caught, but she didn't look away. "I know, and I've stopped caring about what they call a sin." She knelt beside him, setting down a bundle of food and a small flask of water. He took it gratefully, eating slowly. The closeness between them felt different tonight, heavier, charged with unspoken thoughts. "How's your leg?" she asked. "Better," he said, though she could see the pain in his eyes. "Not enough to run, though." "Then I'll stay until it's safe," she said simply. He frowned. "Stay all night?" "Yes," she replied, her voice steady. The candlelight trembled as a draft moved through the room, carrying the scent of incense and the faint chill of night air. Liara sat beside him, her robe brushing his arm. For a moment, neither spoke. "You're different from anyone I've met," Daniel said finally. "You live by rules, yet you'd break them for me." Lyra's lips curved into a faint, sad smile. "I live by rules because I thought they made me pure, but they only made me empty. You've made me feel alive." He looked at her with something deep in his eyes, not just gratitude, but a quiet longing. "And you've made me believe. Not all aliens see humans as monsters." Her fingers tightened slightly in her lap. She could feel the pull between them, as real as the cold stone beneath them. Without thinking, she reached for his hand. His skin was warm, rougher than hers, but steady. The contact sent a shiver through her, not of fear, but of something she had never allowed herself to feel. "You should sleep," she whispered. "I don't want to waste a single moment with you," he said, his voice barely above a breath. Her heart thudded hard against her ribs. She knew the teachings that closeness of body was the first step to falling into temptation. But tonight, she didn't see temptation. She saw a man who had trusted her with his life, who looked at her not as a nun, not as an alien, but as someone precious. She shifted closer, her shoulder resting against his. The warmth between them grew. He didn't move away. For a long time. They just sat there in the quiet, the outside world fading to nothing. And when Daniel leaned his head against hers, she closed her eyes and let the moment stay. Hours passed. At some point, Daniel's breathing slowed, his head tilting gently toward her shoulder. Liara stayed still, listening to the steady rhythm of his chest. She didn't care if this was breaking vows. In her heart, she knew no prayer had ever felt as honest as this. When the first pale light of dawn crept into the chamber, she was still beside him. She would leave before the sisters awoke, return to her duties as if nothing had happened. But she knew something had changed forever. The first light of dawn had barely touched the white towers of the monastery when Liara slipped out of the prayer chamber. Her heart pounded as she moved through the cold stone corridors, every sound seeming louder in the early silence. The faint smell of incense still clung to her robe from the chamber, as if it carried proof of where she had been all night. She made it back to her small cell just as the morning bell rang, calling the sisters to prayer. She knelt in her place with the others, head bowed, lips moving in familiar verses, but her mind was not on the chance. It was on Daniel, on his leg, still too weak for him to escape alone. On the danger that lingered in every shadow of this place. Halfway through the prayers, she noticed movement near the main doors. 2 temple guards entered, speaking quietly with Sister Medrin, the one who had already looked at Liara with suspicion. Medrin's eyes flicked in her direction, sharp and watchful. Liara forced her gaze to remain fixed on the floor. But the chill in her spine deepened. When the prayer ended, the High Matron addressed the sisters. "The intruder is still believed to be near," she said, her voice firm. "This morning, the guards will search again. Every corner, every hidden path. He will not escape the light's judgment." The words struck Liara like a stone. She knew what judgment meant. Daniel's life would end before he could explain anything. She couldn't wait any longer. When the sisters dispersed, Liara slipped away down a side corridor. She moved quickly, but kept her steps silent. The guards were already in the west wing. She had little time. She unlocked the prayer chamber and stepped inside. Daniel was awake, leaning on his good leg, his face tense. "They're searching again, aren't they?" he asked. She nodded, locking the door behind her. "We have to leave." "Now?" Daniel frowned. "Leave? Where can we go?" "The monastery is surrounded by cliffs." "There's a way," she said, already pulling out a small leather pouch. "A tunnel beneath the east tower. It was built long ago for emergencies. Most sisters don't even know it exists. It leads to the old mountain path. Dangerous, but it will take you far from here." His eyes narrowed. "And you?" "I'm going with you," she said, without hesitation. "Liara," he shook his head. "If you leave, you can never return. You'll lose everything." "I've already lost the only thing that mattered. The faith that kept me here," she replied, her voice firm. "All that's left is you." Daniel's expression softened. "Then, let's go." She helped him walk, his arm over her shoulder, her robe hiding the movement of his injured leg as best as it could. They slipped into the lesser-used passageways, avoiding the main halls. Twice they had to press against the wall as guards passed nearby, the sound of their boots echoing. Finally, they reached the east tower. At its base, behind an old tapestry, was a narrow wooden hatch. Liara pulled it open, revealing a black mouth of stone steps leading down. The air from below was damp and cold. They descended into darkness. the only light coming from a small lantern she had hidden here months ago. The tunnel was narrow, forcing them to walk close, Daniel's breathing harsh in the still air. "Why? Do I feel like you've done this before?" Daniel asked quietly. She gave a faint smile. "I haven't, but I've always known the way. I just never had a reason to use it. Until you." The tunnel twisted through the rock, the sound of dripping water echoing ahead. Somewhere above, faint voices called orders. The search was spreading. At last, they reached the end, a stone door that opened to the outside. Liara pushed it with all her strength, the cold mountain wind rushing in to greet them. The path beyond was narrow, clinging to the cliffside with the endless valley below. Daniel looked out, then back at her. "We might die on this path. Better here, free, than in their hands," she said, her voice steady. They stepped out, closing the stone door behind them. The wind whipped at their robes, the sky brightening with the coming sun. Every step was slow, careful. One slip could mean the end. As they moved along the cliff, Liara felt a strange calm settle over her. The monastery was now far behind, hidden by the rocks. Ahead lay danger, yes, but also possibility. And for the first time in her life, she wasn't walking toward the safety of walls. She was walking away from them and toward something real. The mountain path seemed endless, winding like a thin scar along the side of the cliff. The wind bit at Liara's cheeks, and the cold air stung her lungs. Every few steps, she tightened her grip on Daniel's arm, steadying him as his injured leg threatened to give way. Below them, the valley stretched out, painted in the soft light of dawn. Wisps of cloud drifted lazily between jagged peaks, and far in the distance, faint trails of smoke marked the location of settlements, human settlements. They walked in silence for a long time, saving their strength. The only sounds were the crunch of boots on loose stone and the distant call of mountain birds. Liara kept glancing behind them, half expecting to see temple guards appearing on the path. But there was nothing. At last, they reached a narrow crevice in the cliffside, almost invisible unless you knew where to look. Liara led Daniel inside, where the rock walls sheltered them from the biting wind. It wasn't much, just a small space where they could rest, but it was hidden. Daniel lowered himself onto a flat rock with a sharp exhale. "I think this is as far as my leg will take me for now." She knelt beside him, checking the wound. Again, the bandages were worn, but the bleeding had stopped. Relief loosened the knot in her chest. "You'll heal," she said quietly. Daniel gave a faint smile. "You keep saying that, and somehow I believe you." For a while, they just sat there, breathing in the cold, clean air. The monastery felt like a lifetime ago. The endless prayers, the echo of sandals in stone corridors, the weight of vows she thought were unshakable. Now, all that felt like a dream that had faded with the sunrise. "Liara," Daniel said after a moment, his voice softer than the wind, "you could still go back. No one would know you were the one who helped me escape. You could say, I forced you." She shook her head. "Even if I could, I wouldn't. I didn't just leave the monastery, Daniel. I left that life. Those rules. That cage." He studied her face, his expression serious. "And what about your faith?" She looked away, her eyes tracing the horizon where the sun was climbing over the peaks. Faith is supposed to be about love, mercy, and truth. But in there, it was about fear. About control, I think. Maybe I've found a new faith now. He tilted his head. "In what?" Her eyes returned to his, steady and sure. "In you, in us. In the choice we made." Something unspoken passed between them, a quiet understanding that neither needed to name. By midday, Daniel was able to stand again, leaning heavily on a makeshift staff Liara had carved from a dead branch. Together, they began the slow descent toward the valley. The path grew easier, and soon, they could hear the distant rush of a river as they neared the tree line. The air grew warmer, the smell of pine replacing the sharp bite of mountain wind. For the first time in days, Liara allowed herself to believe they might actually make it. Hours later, they spotted movement through the trees, small wooden houses, smoke curling from chimneys, and the faint laughter of children playing near. The riverbank, a human settlement. Neil stopped, his voice catching home. They walked into the village cautiously, but the people greeted Daniel with surprise and warmth, recognizing him as one of their own. They didn't ask too many questions about Liara, though a few curious glances followed her silver eyes and blue skin. A kind-faced woman offered them shelter in her spare room until Daniel recovered. The bed was soft, the air inside warm, and for the first time since she had fled the monastery, Liara felt safe. That evening, as the sun dipped low and the fire crackled, Daniel sat beside her. His leg was propped up, and the lines of pain on his face were softer now. "You saved my life," he said quietly. "And you saved mine," she replied, just in a different way. He reached for her hand, and this time she didn't hesitate. Their fingers fit together like they had always been meant to. "Liara," he said, his voice steady, "stay with me. Not because you have nowhere else to go, but because you choose to." Her lips curved into a small, sure smile. "I already made that choice on the mountain." Outside, the night settled gently over the valley, the stars bright above. The world beyond the monastery's walls was vast, dangerous, and uncertain, but it was theirs now. And in that quiet moment, hand in hand, Liara knew the truth. She had been searching for all her life. Some bonds were stronger than vows. Some truths were greater than fear. And sometimes, the purest faith was simply choosing the person you couldn't bear to lose.